White limestone temples rise from green jungle canopy in the foothills of Chiapas, their carved facades documenting a dynasty that ruled for 7 centuries before the plazas fell silent and the forest returned. This is Palenque, the Maya city that engineered water to flow through stone beneath its streets, buried its greatest king inside a 9-tiered pyramid, and encoded its entire history in hieroglyphs that archaeologists would not decipher for another 1,000 years. What made this particular hillside, where 9 springs emerge from limestone bedrock, the site of one of the classic Maya world's most architecturally ambitious cities? How did builders working without metal tools or wheeled vehicles quarry, carve, and lift the massive stones that formed corbel-vaulted palaces and temple pyramids reaching toward the canopy? And why, after 8 centuries of construction and expansion, did the inhabitants carve their final monument in 799 and walk away, leaving the White City to be consumed by roots and rain? This is the complete story of Palenque across its entire urban lifetime. We begin with the first settlers around 100 before Christ, who recognized what this terrain offered: permanent water, defensible elevation, and control of trade routes between highlands and coast. We walk through the city's transformation from scattered farming villages into a planned ceremonial center with plastered pyramids and a royal dynasty. We witness the 68-year reign of Kiinich Janab Pakal, who rebuilt Palenque in stone and stucco and commissioned the Temple of the Inscriptions as his tomb. We descend the interior stairway into his burial chamber, where a jade mosaic mask covered his face and carved hieroglyphs documented his journey to the underworld. We experience the city at its 8th century peak, when perhaps 20,000 people lived within its metropolitan area, when the palace tower rose 4 stories above the jungle, when sophisticated aqueducts channeled streams through vaulted passages beneath plaza floors. We examine the hydraulic engineering that allowed high-density urban occupation in a challenging tropical environment. We follow the city through military defeat, political collapse, and the gradual abandonment that left temples empty and allowed ceiba trees to split their roofs. And we trace the rediscovery. Spanish explorers hearing rumors of stone cities, 19th century adventurers publishing illustrations that brought Palenque to international attention, and the 1952 discovery of Pakal's tomb that revolutionized understanding of Maya civilization. Palenque matters because its stones still speak. The hieroglyphic texts carved into temple panels allow historians to reconstruct dynastic succession with precision unmatched at most Maya sites. The architectural sophistication reveals urban planning principles and engineering knowledge that challenge assumptions about pre-industrial cities. The tomb of Pakal, sealed for 12 centuries, preserved artifacts and iconography that illuminate Maya beliefs about death, kingship, and cosmic order. And the ruins themselves, emerging from jungle that reclaimed them with remarkable speed, demonstrate both the ambition of Maya urbanism and the fragility of even the most monumental civilizations. If you value complete journeys through the cities that shaped history, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Each week we bring you the full story of a world built in stone, carved in hieroglyphs, and preserved in the archaeological record. Let us begin this journey where all cities begin, with the ground itself and the choice to build here at all. Long before any name reaches this place, the land already holds its shape. The limestone foothills of what will one day be called Chiapas rise in pale terraces from the broad coastal plain, climbing toward the highlands behind them. Mist clings to the canopy at dawn. Cedar, mahogany, and ceiba lift their crowns above a tangled understory of ferns and vines. Within the porous stone, rainwater moves unseen through fractured channels, gathering, descending, and finding its release where the rock breaks open along a narrow shelf of higher ground. There, water emerges, not in a single spring, but in many. 9 separate streams surface along the same band of escarpment, each carving a small ravine through the soft limestone before joining the slow rivers that drain northward to the Gulf. The streams run cold and clear through every season, untouched by the long droughts that empty rivers across the lowlands. Above them, the land flattens into natural terraces, sheltered by ridges, raised above the seasonal flooding of the plain, and shaded by forest dense enough to hold its own weather. This is the ground the first settlers choose. By around 100 years before the Common Era, small groups begin clearing patches of forest along the upper terraces. They cut milpa fields into the slopes, planting maize, beans, and squash in the thin red soil. Their houses are simple, with packed earth floors, low stone foundations, and perishable walls of pole and thatch. They draw water directly from the springs and quarry small blocks of limestone from outcrops a short walk from their hearths. The advantages of the place sharpen with each generation. Elevation lifts settlement above the mosquito-thick floodplain. The springs guarantee a permanence that low-country villages cannot claim. The terraces, already cut by the streams into level steps, invite construction without the labor of grading. The limestone itself, soft enough to carve when freshly quarried and hardening on exposure to air, offers a material ready for the most delicate inscription. The position commands a quiet, strategic logic, threading between mountain and sea along the corridor that links highland valleys with the trading networks of the coast. By around 200 of the Common Era, scattered hamlets along the terraces begin to draw together. Low platforms appear in the clearings, faced with rough limestone blocks and surfaced with white plaster burned from local stone. They are modest at first, knee-high, then waist-high, then taller, raised in successive layers as each generation enlarges the work of the last. Plazas are leveled around them. Drainage channels are cut into the bedrock to guide rainwater away from the new surfaces. The streams, once allowed to wander, are nudged into straighter courses with stacked stone banks. By around 400 of the Common Era, the outline of a city has begun to gather on the shelf. The forest has been pushed back from a widening core. The platforms have grown into the lower stages of pyramids. Carved fragments, still rough, still unreadable, lie among the construction debris. The springs continue their patient emergence from the rock, feeding channels now beginning to be lined with cut stone. Above the canopy, the limestone foothills hold their pale curve against the darker mountains behind, and the place that the future will call Palenque waits, half built, half forest, for the dynasty that has not yet named itself. The decades that follow lay fresh courses of cut stone on the rough cores already in place. By the early 5th century of the Common Era, the platforms have stopped being mere foundations and become pyramids in their own right, broad-shouldered and stepped, faced with squared limestone blocks lifted from quarries cut into the surrounding ridges. White lime plaster smooths over the joints. The first true temples rise on the summits, small chambers of corbelled stone, narrow and dark, their roofs already pierced for the airy combs that will one day distinguish the city's silhouette against the green ridge. In the year 431 of the Common Era, a name finally enters the record. Kuqbahlam, remembered by later carvers as the founder, takes the throne of the place that his successors will come to call Lakamha, the Great Waters. The river city is no longer a cluster of platforms tended by anonymous hands. It has acquired a lineage. The carved fragments that begin to appear on the slopes carry the long count dates of a court learning to write itself into stone, glyph by careful glyph. Around the rising pyramids, the lower terraces are leveled and plastered into formal courts. A modest palace takes shape on a wide platform near the largest spring, a single-story arrangement of vaulted rooms and open patios, the seed of the great labyrinth that will sprawl outward in later generations. Stone benches line the chambers. Stucco panels, still simple, still cautious, are pressed onto the exterior walls and tinted with red oxide drawn from the surrounding hills. The court that gathers here is small, but it is permanent. Beyond the ceremonial core, the residential city spreads across the natural shelves of the foothills. Stone foundations are cut into the slopes in tight terraces, each one supporting a perishable house of timber and thatch. Narrow footpaths thread between them. Smoke from cooking fires drifts through the canopy in thin, steady columns. Below, in the cleared lowlands, the milpa fields are widened year by year, maize and beans and squash rising in the rotation that the highlands taught the lowlands long before. The 5th and 6th centuries are not quiet ones. To the east, the great power of Calakmul extends its alliances across the lowlands. To the south, the rival center of Tonina hardens behind its terraced acropolis. Carved monuments at Lakama begin to record skirmishes, captures, and dynastic marriages, the slow arithmetic of survival between larger neighbors. Some rulers reign briefly, others are scarcely named. The dynasty bends but does not break. By the close of the 6th century, the city has taken on a recognizable shape. The pyramids are taller, their tiers steeper, their stairways flanked by carved balustrades. The palace has acquired second platforms and a wider footprint. The aqueducts beneath the plazas run with cleaner water through more finished channels. The forest has been pushed further back from the white plaster. And in the year 603, in a chamber of the growing palace, a child is born to the line of Kuqbahlam, who will, in the long reign ahead of him, raise this still modest sacred center into one of the most ambitious cities the lowland forest will ever hold. The child born in 603 reaches his 12th year in 615, and on a date carved into stone as 9 Ahau 8 Shul, he ascends to the mat and throne. The city he inherits stands half-formed. The pyramids rise no higher than 5 or 6 tiers. The palace sprawls across its platform in disconnected chambers. The plazas are paved but narrow. The population numbers perhaps 3,000 souls. Rival cities press from the west and south. The dynasty's claim to divine descent rests on monuments already weathering in the rain. Kinich Janab Pakal, the name means great sun shield, will rule for 68 years, and in that span he will transform Palenque from a modest ceremonial center into one of the most architecturally sophisticated cities the Maya world will produce. The transformation begins not with conquest, but with stone. Within 5 years of his accession, quarrying crews are cutting fresh blocks from the limestone bedrock east of the palace. Masons are laying new courses on the pyramid that will become the Temple of the Inscriptions. Plasterers are mixing lime and water into smooth white surfaces that will cover every visible facade. The city is being rebuilt, tier by tier, in a style that will define Palenque for the next century. The palace expands first. New galleries extend south and east from the old core, their walls rising in vertical planes before stepping back in the distinctive mansard profile that becomes Palenque's signature. Corbel vaults span interior chambers, each stone course cantilevering inward until the gap can be bridged with capstones. The vaults are narrow, rarely more than 2 meters wide, but they allow rooms to be stacked and connected in ways that thatch and timber cannot match. Courtyards open between the galleries, their floors paved with limestone slabs, their walls lined with carved panels documenting Pakal's ancestry back through 13 generations to the dynasty's mythical founder. Stucco portraits emerge from the piers, life-sized figures of rulers and gods modelled in high relief, painted red and blue and white, their faces individualized, their headdresses layered with symbolic detail. The Temple of the Inscriptions rises slowly. By 630, the pyramid has reached its 4th tier. By 650, the 7th. The construction is deliberate, each tier set back from the one below, the stairway climbing the north face in a single, unbroken flight. The temple that will crown the summit is already planned, a 3-chambered sanctuary with a mansard roof and a pierced roof comb that will rise another 6 meters above the roofline. But the pyramid's true purpose lies hidden. Beneath the temple floor, masons are cutting a stairway into the bedrock, descending at a steep angle into the heart of the structure. The stairway will eventually reach 22 meters below the temple threshold, ending in a vaulted chamber where Pakal himself will be laid to rest. No other Maya pyramid yet discovered contains such an interior tomb. The engineering required to support the weight of 9 tiers above a hollow core to prevent collapse, to channel water away from the burial chamber, represents a level of architectural ambition that pushes the limits of corbel vault technology. While the Great Pyramid rises, the hydraulic engineers are reworking the city's water system. The 9 streams that descend from the hills are being channeled into stone-lined aqueducts, some open to the sky, others vaulted and buried beneath plaza floors. The main aqueduct, the one that will carry the largest volume, is being constructed as a true subterranean passage, its corbel vault spanning nearly 2 meters, tall enough for a person to walk through. The engineering allows the streams to pass beneath buildings without weakening foundations, permits plazas to be built over running water, and creates controlled cascades and pools that integrate water into the sacred landscape. The sound of flowing water becomes part of the city's acoustic environment, a constant presence beneath the white stone. By 680, Palenque has been rebuilt. The Temple of the Inscriptions stands complete, its 9 tiers rising 21 meters above the plaza, its summit temple crowned with a roof comb pierced with geometric patterns. The palace has grown into a labyrinth of galleries and courtyards covering nearly 1 hectare. The cross-group temples, 3 pyramids arranged around a plaza east of the palace, are under construction, their foundations already laid. The residential zones have expanded up the surrounding hills in terraced compounds, stone platforms supporting houses with perishable walls and thatch roofs. The population has doubled, perhaps tripled. The white plaster gleams. And in the year 683, in the 81st year of his life, and the 68th of his reign, Kinich Janab Pakal dies. His body is carried down the interior stairway into the tomb chamber that has waited, sealed and dark, for 3 decades. The sarcophagus lid, a massive slab carved with the image of the king falling into the jaws of the underworld, is lowered into place. The stairway is filled with rubble, the temple floor is sealed, and the city he rebuilt in white limestone stands ready for the son who will carry the vision forward into its final, most ambitious phase. The temple that holds him stands at the southern edge of the great plaza, 9 tiers of white plaster rising against the green wall of jungle behind. The count is deliberate. 9 levels for the 9 layers of Xibalba, the underworld through which the king must now travel, his journey carved in stone above him and reenacted in the descending stair below. That stair is the temple's secret. From the summit chamber, where 3 carved panels record 617 glyphs of dynastic history reaching back into mythic time, a hidden passage drops into the heart of the pyramid. 66 steps cut down through the masonry, doubling back on themselves in 2 flights, descending nearly 70 feet from the temple floor to a level well below the plaza outside. The walls weep with moisture. The air thickens. At the bottom, a heavy triangular slab seals a chamber that no living person will see for 1,269 years. Beyond the slab, the chamber opens into vaulted darkness. Its corbel-arched ceiling rises in stepped courses of cut limestone. Stucco reliefs along the walls show the 9 lords of the night, life-sized figures striding in procession, witnesses to the king's passage. At the chamber's center rests the sarcophagus, a single block of limestone weighing roughly 20 tons, hollowed to receive the body. Above it, the carved lid, the most famous single image in Maya art, shows Pakal at the moment of death, falling backward into the open jaws of the earth, while above him the world tree rises through the layers of the cosmos, a celestial bird perched at its crown. Within the sarcophagus, the body is laid in red cinnabar, a powder of mercury sulfide so saturated that it stains the bones, the jade, the chamber air itself. Around him rest the offerings of a king, a mosaic mask of 200 jade tesserae, fitted to the contours of his face with eyes of shell and obsidian, ear flares, pectorals, bracelets, and rings of carved jade. Jade beads placed in each hand and one in the mouth, pearls, pyrite mirrors, ceramic vessels arranged at the foot of the coffin. A narrow stone tube, square in section and barely wide enough for a hand, runs from the side of the sarcophagus up the length of the stairway and out through the temple floor far above. The Maya word for it is lost. Archaeologists call it the psychoduct. Its purpose is direct. It is a channel for the king's spirit to travel between the tomb and the world of the living, between the underworld layers below and the offerings made on the temple summit above. Then the chamber is sealed. The triangular slab is fitted into place. 6 attendants, sacrificed at the threshold, are laid in the antechamber as companions for the journey. The stairway is filled course by course with rubble and clay. The summit chamber is closed, its floor restored, and across the centuries that follow, the temple stands as a solid mass, its inner secret invisible from any outer measurement. 1,200 years pass. Roots crack the upper terraces. Plaster falls away. And in the year 1952, after 4 seasons of patient excavation, the Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz Luillier reaches the foot of the rediscovered stair, lifts the triangular slab, and looks into a chamber where the air has not moved since 683. The chamber that swallows that long silence belongs to a city that, in the summer of 725, is anything but silent. Step back from the sealed tomb, climb again into daylight, and let the sun stand directly above the central plaza. The year is 12 Ahau 8 Sesh in the count the scribes keep, the reign of Kinich Akal Mo Nab III in his 5th year on the throne, and Palenque has reached the fullness of itself. From the upper terrace of the Temple of the Inscriptions, the city spreads outward in tiers of white. Plastered facades catch the light so cleanly that the eye must adjust, as if looking at sun on water. Red pigment runs along cornices and roof combs. Stucco figures crowd the upper walls of every temple, modelled in high relief, their painted skins faded only at the edges where rain has touched them. The palace stands at the centre, its courtyard sunken into the platform, its 4-story tower rising above the surrounding roofs, its mansard profiles repeating the silhouette of the mountains behind. Around the palace, the great plazas hold the rhythm of a working capital. To the east of the central court, the temples of the Cross group close around their own elevated plaza. The Temple of the Cross rises to the north, the Temple of the Sun to the west, the Temple of the Foliated Cross to the east, each crowned with a pierced roof comb, each holding within its sanctuary a carved tablet that tells the story of the city's 3 patron gods and ties the living king to their first kindling at the beginning of the present world. The tablets were dressed and set during the previous reign, and the plaster on their outer walls is still bright. Sound rises from below in layers. From the ball court at the northern edge of the ceremonial core comes the dull report of a rubber sphere striking sloped stone, the call of a count being kept, the rush of wagered cloth and cacao changing hands. From the workshops along the lower terraces comes the ring of chert against limestone, the scrape of obsidian dressing the surface of a panel, the soft tap of wooden mallets shaping wet stucco into the curve of a brow or the feathers of a headdress. From the open ground beside the Otulum stream comes the murmur of a market, bundles of dried fish carried up from the coastal lagoons, salt from the Tabasco shore, jade ruffs from the distant Motagua, quetzal feathers from the cloud forests of the south, cotton mantles, painted ceramics, ground cacao pressed into cakes. Walk outward from the plazas and the city does not thin so much as change in texture. The ceremonial core, perhaps 6 square kilometers of temples, courts, causeways, and elite compounds, gives way to terraces climbing the hillsides on every side. Stone foundations carry pole and thatch superstructures, their walls plastered white, their floors of packed lime. Each compound holds several houses set around a small patio, with a kitchen marked by 3 hearthstones, a low shrine where ancestors sleep beneath the floor, storage bins of maize, beans, and squash, and a back garden of chili, avocado, and ramon. Smoke from cooking fires drifts up through the canopy and catches in the morning mist. In the streets between compounds, water is everywhere. The 9 streams that fall from the escarpment have been gathered, narrowed, vaulted, and released according to a plan worked out across generations. Stone-lined channels run beneath the plazas. Pressure cones built into the slope force water upward through narrow throats, and send it leaping into basins where women filled jars at dawn. The corbel-vaulted aqueduct that carries the otulum beneath the eastern flank of the palace runs cool even at midday, its chamber dark, its surface broken only by the steady glide of water moving toward the lower city. 20,000 lives, by the careful estimates that archaeology will one day allow, are folded into this terrain. 6,000 to 8,000 within the ceremonial core, the rest scattered through the terraced suburbs, the outlying hamlets, the milpa farms that climb every accessible slope and feed the capital from below. Farmers come up the causeways at dawn carrying tribute maize. Scribes cross the palace courtyards with bark paper books folded under their arms. Stone workers move blocks on log rollers along the processional ways. Priests in jaguar pelts climb the temple stairs to greet the noon sun. From the summit of the palace tower, the highest point in the city, the view runs north across the rooftops and out over the coastal plain until the land softens into haze where the gulf begins. Behind, the Sierras rise green and dark. Below, in every direction, white plaster and red trim, and the smoke of fires and the silver thread of water held in stone. The city has never been larger. It will not be larger again. The height that makes the tower useful, the view it commands, depends on what lies beneath. The plazas that spread white and level across the city's core are not simply paved ground. They are roofs. Beneath them, water moves. 9 separate streams descend from the hills behind Palenque, fed by springs that emerge where limestone meets impermeable clay. In their natural state, these streams would cut gullies through the terraces, flood the low ground during the rains, and turn the ceremonial center into impassable mud. The builders who laid out the city in the centuries before Pakal understood this. They did not fight the water. They channeled it. The oldest aqueducts date to the 3rd and 4th centuries, when the first substantial platforms were rising. Simple at first, stone-lined trenches covered with capstones, carrying water beneath the edges of plazas. But as the city grew, the engineering grew with it. By the time Pakal's architects were expanding the palace complex, the hydraulic system had become as sophisticated as any structure above ground. The main aqueduct runs beneath the palace itself, a corbel-vaulted tunnel 3 meters high, wide enough for a man to walk through upright. The stones are cut and fitted without mortar, each course cantilevered inward until the walls meet at the apex. The floor is paved smooth. The ceiling curves overhead in the same profile as the temple roofs above. The same architectural language, repeated underground where no eye will see it. Water flows through this tunnel year-round, channeled from the Otulum stream that descends from the hills directly behind the palace. The sound echoes in the darkness, a constant rush, muffled by stone, that no one standing in the sunlit courtyards above can hear. This is the earliest known vaulted aqueduct in Mesoamerica. The engineering required to build it, calculating the gradient to maintain flow without erosion, constructing the corbel vault to bear the weight of the palace platforms above, ensuring the joints remain watertight across centuries, represents knowledge accumulated over generations. The men who designed it left no written treatises. Their expertise is encoded in the stones themselves. Other streams are captured in similar fashion. The Murciélagos, the Picota, the Baño de la Reina, each is intercepted upstream, diverted into stone channels, and carried beneath the urban core. Some channels run open through residential zones, providing water for households. Others disappear underground, passing beneath temple platforms and ball courts. At certain points, the channels widen into basins where water pools before continuing downslope. These basins serve as settling tanks, allowing sediment to drop out before the water reaches the ceremonial center. They also serve as reservoirs during the dry season, when spring flow diminishes, but the city's population still requires water. The system is not merely functional, it is symbolic. In Maya cosmology, water is the boundary between worlds. The underworld, Xibalba, is a watery realm entered through caves and cenotes. By channeling streams beneath the city, the builders create a literal underworld, a hidden layer where water flows through stone passages in perpetual darkness. The plazas above become the surface of the earth, the middle world where humans live. The temple summits reach towards the sky, the celestial realm of gods and ancestors. At several points, the hidden water is made visible. In the palace's eastern courtyard, a stone channel emerges from underground, flows across the open pavement in a shallow trough, then disappears again beneath the western galleries. The water is clear, cold from its underground passage. During ceremonies, this visible stream would have been understood as a manifestation of the sacred, the underworld made present in the heart of royal power. Elsewhere, the engineers created fountains. By controlling the elevation and gradient of channels, they generated enough pressure to force water upward through vertical pipes. These fountains appear in elite residential compounds on the hillsides east of the palace. The water rises, spills into carved basins, then drains away through secondary channels. The effect is both practical, providing water at convenient locations, and aesthetic. The sound of falling water, the play of light on moving surfaces, the coolness in the tropical heat. The labor required to build and maintain this system is invisible in the same way the system itself is invisible. Hundreds of workers quarrying stone, cutting channels, laying capstones, backfilling with rubble and earth. Maintenance crews clearing sediment from settling basins, repairing joints where tree roots have penetrated, dredging channels after storms. This work continues throughout the city's life, as essential as the rituals performed in the temples above. By 725, the hydraulic system has been functioning for 4 centuries. The oldest channels are still in use, their stones worn smooth by water. The newest additions serve the most recent residential expansions on the northern slopes. The city's population, perhaps 20,000 at its peak, depends entirely on this hidden infrastructure. Without it, Palenque could not exist at this scale, in this location. The water that flows beneath the plazas will outlast the city itself. Long after the last carved date, long after the temples are abandoned and the jungle returns, the streams will continue their descent. The stone channels will carry water through darkness, serving no one, until tree roots finally split the vaults and the tunnels collapse into rubble. But that collapse is still a century away. For now the water moves as the engineers intended, silent and unseen, holding the city above the ground. The century that the engineers cannot see arrives slowly, then all at once. The first cracks in Palenque's confidence open not in stone, but in the records carved across its monuments. Decades earlier, in the year 711, a force from rival Toninar had crossed the lowlands and struck at the heart of the dynasty. The ruler then seated on Pakal's throne Kinich Khan Joychitam II was taken alive. His captors carved their victory into their own stones, depicting him bound and humbled, and at Palenque a silence falls across the monumental record for nearly a decade. No new dates appear, no new buildings rise. The white plaster on the older temples begins, for the first time, to weather without fresh coats to renew it. When the carving resumes under Kinich Akol Mo Nab III, the tone has changed. The texts speak less of cosmic descent and more of legitimacy painstakingly reclaimed. The tablet of the 96 glyphs, set into a wall of the palace, lists the dynasty in careful order, as if the line itself must be reinforced against forgetting. New construction continues, but at a slower pace, with thinner walls and shallower carving. The stucco portraits that once flowed with confident modelling grow stiffer. The mansard roofs are still raised, but the labour required to feed the workshops is harder to summon from the surrounding hills. Beyond the city, the wider world is changing in ways no ruler can carve away. Across the central lowlands, the long droughts that climate records will one day pull from cave sediments and lake beds begin their work. Rains that once arrived on the same months for generations now falter. Maize yields fall on the terraced milpas. The springs that feed the aqueducts run thinner during the dry months. The hidden engineering still functions, but it carries less, and the population it sustains begins to thin at the edges. Outlying residential compounds are abandoned first. Hearths go cold. Roof timbers, no longer replaced, sag and fall. Within the city core, ceremonies still proceed. Incense still burns in the sanctuaries of the cross group. The ball court still hosts its games, but the carved monuments grow rarer, and the names upon them are less certain. Kinich Janab Pakal II briefly takes the throne. Then Kinich Kuk Bahlam II. Then a ruler named Wak Kimi Janab Pakal, whose accession in 799 is recorded on a modest vessel rather than a great stela. That date, 799 of the Common Era, will prove to be the last clear royal date Palenque ever carves. After it, the chronicle simply stops. The stopping is not a single event. There is no sack, no burning, no sudden flight. The city empties in stages over perhaps 2 generations. Court functions thin. Scribes leave or die without successors. The workshops that produced limestone panels grow quiet, their unfinished blocks left where they lay. Markets that once traded cacao and jade and obsidian shrink to local exchanges and then vanish. Families on the upper terraces, where the aqueducts run weakest, depart first, carrying what they can toward smaller settlements in the foothills or down toward the coastal plain. The lower compounds hold longer, drawing on the central plaza's still flowing fountains. By the middle of the 9th century, the great plazas stand empty during ceremonies that are no longer held. The palace tower, once an observatory tracking the movements of Venus and the sun, looks out over courtyards where no one walks. Plaster begins to fall in sheets from the temple facades. The red pigment that covered the stucco fades under sun and rain. Within a few decades, the first saplings find purchase in the cracks between roof stones. Strangler figs send their roots down, across the carved panels of the cross group. Caber trees rise from the corners of the palace courtyards, their roots prying apart corbel vaults that had stood for 200 years. The aqueducts continue, as they will for a while longer, carrying water through darkness beneath plazas no foot now crosses. The stone channels do not know the city is gone. They serve the same function they always served, only without purpose now, until the day a tree root finds a seam in a vault and begins, very slowly, to widen it. Above ground, the jungle moves with a speed that surprises every later observer. Within a single human lifetime, the White City becomes a series of green mounds. Within two, the mounds are indistinguishable from natural hills, save where a corner of carved stone breaks through a curtain of vines. The stones do not speak. The hieroglyphs that recorded 68 years of Pakal's reign and the descent of the dynasty from gods sit in darkness beneath bark and moss, waiting through a silence that will last more than 900 years before a stranger climbs the overgrown stair and wonders what lies beneath. The stranger who climbs that stair arrives in 1773, a Spanish priest named Antonio de Solis, following rumors of stone cities heard from Maya farmers who still live in scattered settlements near the ruins. He finds walls taller than houses rising from the forest floor, carved panels half visible through curtains of strangler fig, doorways opening into darkness where bats nest in corbel vaulted chambers. He sketches what he can see, measures what he can reach, and writes a report that reaches colonial administrators in Guatemala City, but generates little interest. The stones remain silent, their hieroglyphs unreadable, their builders unknown. 60 years pass before the next visitor arrives with serious intent. Jean-Frédéric Weldeck, a French artist and adventurer, spends 2 years at Palenque beginning in 1832, living in a makeshift shelter inside the palace complex while he draws the ruins. His illustrations are beautiful and wildly inaccurate. He adds Egyptian details that do not exist, invents decorative elements to fill gaps in eroded stucco, and populates his drawings with classical figures that have nothing to do with Maya civilization. But his work brings Palenque into European consciousness, and others follow. John Lloyd Stevens, an American lawyer and diplomat, reaches the site in 1841 with English artist Frederick Catherwood. They spend weeks clearing vegetation from facades, copying hieroglyphs they cannot read, measuring buildings whose purpose they can only guess. Catherwood's drawings are precise, architecturally faithful, and when published in Stevens's best-selling travel narrative, they create a sensation. Here is proof that sophisticated civilization existed in the Americas before European contact, that the jungle conceals cities as ambitious as anything built in the Old World. The stones begin to speak, though no one yet understands their language. Through the late 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists arrive with shovels and cameras. They clear plazas, consolidate crumbling walls, photograph carved panels, and begin the slow work of mapping the site. But the hieroglyphs remain mysterious, dismissed by many scholars as purely decorative, their phonetic content unrecognized. The city's history stays locked in stone. The breakthrough comes in 1952. Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz Luillier notices something previous excavators missed: a stone slab in the floor of the Temple of the Inscriptions, with finger holes drilled along one edge, as if meant to be lifted. He removes it and finds a stairway descending into darkness, filled with rubble. His team spends 4 field seasons clearing the passage, removing tons of limestone fill, following the stairs down through the pyramid's interior. In June of 1952, they reach a triangular stone door at the bottom. Behind it lies a vaulted chamber containing a massive carved sarcophagus, and inside the sarcophagus, the jade-covered skeleton of Kinich Janab Pakal, dead for 1,269 years. The discovery revolutionizes Maya archaeology. Here is proof that pyramids served as royal tombs, that Maya rulers were historical figures, not mythological abstractions, that the hieroglyphs carved on the sarcophagus lid and temple walls record actual events. Within 2 decades, epigraphers crack the phonetic code of Maya writing. The glyphs that sat silent for 9 centuries suddenly speak. Dates, names, battles, marriages, accessions, deaths. The stones tell their own story now, in their own words. Pakal's 68-year reign emerges from darkness. His son's construction of the cross-group temples becomes documented history. The defeat by Tonina in 711, the last monument in 799, all of it readable, verifiable, precise. Today, Palenque stands partially cleared, a UNESCO World Heritage Site where white limestone temples rise above green canopy. The jungle still presses close, held back by constant maintenance. Tourists walk plazas that once held 20,000 people. Archaeologists continue excavating residential compounds on surrounding hillsides, revealing the city's full extent. The aqueducts still carry water, though no one drinks from them now. The hieroglyphs, photographed and catalogued, have been translated into dozens of languages. The stones speak, and the world listens, 900 years after silence fell.